Government continues to ensure that privatization process is transparent. NRE to revamp the draft 2005 National Biosafety Policy, and Finance Minister revealed priorities in 2013 budget. Weekly Digest is a government information agency program that keeps you up to date on what the government has been doing to better the lives of all Guyanese. With the details, I am Sue Finley Williams. The government of Guyana has and continues to ensure that the process of privatization is done in a manner that it can withstand any level of scrutiny.
Privatization is executed by the Privatization Unit, an arm of the National Industrial and Commercial Investments Limited, and is guided by a rigorous process during which every step is scrutinized, leaving nothing to chance. This process begins with identifying the specific entity for disposal. This is followed by a review of the legal, financial, strategic, and environmental issues. Major stakeholders such as the board of directors, unions, and employees are included. Despite the release of NISL's transactions and a step-by-step explanation of the process by which each transaction is carried out, spurious accusations continue to be levied against NISL and the ruling administration. However, to date, no evidence has been brought forward to substantiate these claims. The bylaws of NISL provide for it to hold the funds and for dividends to be declared solely at the discretion of its directors. There is no requirement that mandates NISL to place these monies in the consolidated fund. From 1994 to 2001, NISL paid over $2.3 billion to the Treasury in dividends and over $9 billion between 2002 to 2011. NISL and all its subsidiaries are being audited by the Auditor General's Office and are then consolidated. Over the last 2 years, the Ministry of Finance has submitted over 80 sets of records or annual reports for the subsidiaries of NISL from 2002 to date to the National Assembly.
Government, with assistance of the United States, continues the quest for improved port security in keeping with international regulations.
A two-day tabletop exercise aimed at exchanging tactics and best practices for combating a possible terrorist attack was conducted at the Regency Hotel in Georgetown on February 13th and 14th.
Where we all join together and run through a fictitious scenario of actors who will be conducting an attack on a port facility in Guyana. We will then see what the government's and partner agency responses to that attack will be, so that we can run through our plans, ensure that they all still are practical, that they make sense, and that we are able to execute those, knowing what kind of resources, personnel, and time requirements we'll have to ensure the safety of all the people of Guyana and resolve whatever kind of incident arises as quickly and safely as possible.
The exercise was part of an ongoing bilateral cooperation effort between the two countries.
Our goal is to take whatever preparations you have made to respond to a terrorist threat and increase those and make you tougher, stronger, and a harder target. So we're basically trying to get everyone in the world on the same boat to increase the security.
The exercise attracted participants from several governmental agencies such as the Guyana Defense Force, Coast Guard, Police and Fire Services, as well as the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, the Health Ministry, and local shipping associations.
It is always important for them to sensitize and equip the port facility security officers so that they can effectively discharge their mandate.
The government has made numerous opportunities available to young people to acquire skills and knowledge to make them employable. Youth development programs are offered by the Ministries of Culture, Youth and Sport, Local Government, Home Affairs and Labor.
In an effort to ensure youths contribute to a meaningful way in society, government has been investing in the lives of youth through the length and breadth of Guyana. Some of the areas covered are the Youth Entrepreneurial Skills Training Program, the President's Youth Award Republic of Guyana, PYARG, National Training Project for Youth Empowerment, NTPYE, and the Citizen Security Program.
It benefited me good because I actually have a certificate now to open my own business.
These programs cater for youths that are school dropouts and unemployed. The Youth Entrepreneurial Skills Training Program, the National Training Project for Youth Empowerment, is focused on the NOC Vocational Skills Training on areas such as electrical installation, handicraft, joinery, tailoring, garment making, welding and fabrication, carpentry and masonry.
I'm happy today that I have graduated from this institute. So I hope many more people come out and like connect with the program and train to be something, because it's something good. And I'm happy I'm here today.
The PYARG is in all 10 of Guyana's administrative regions and is available for persons 14 to 25 years old. The Citizen Security Program for Youths is aimed at enhancing citizen security and coexistence by contributing to the reduction in levels of crime, violence, and insecurity in the country. This evaluates policies and improves the level of staff through technical assistance, training, computer equipment, and software design.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment is working with several government agencies to revamp the draft 2005 National Biosafety Policy to meet the country's international obligation to safeguard its biodiversity against risks posed by biotechnology. Minister of Natural Resources and the Environment Robert Prasad has given the EPA 6 months to work with stakeholders in the field to formulate and propose for implementation this new national biosafety policy model. Towards this objective, the EPA recently facilitated the first in a series of what is to be a countrywide consultation with stakeholders at the Grand Coastal Inn, East Coast, Demerara.
The draft policy that we have is outdated too. The draft policy that we have, and I must thank the authors for doing this in 2005, but the world has moved on significantly, and our Guyana too, we have moved on in many areas. And so we must be very critical in terms of what we develop in terms of refining and, as I would want to say, rehabilitating the 2005 document so that it will satisfy our objectives and allow us to deal with issues in terms of satisfying people's social and economic needs.
Developing and implementing the revised policy is vital to safeguarding the sustainable utilization and development of the country's rich biodiversity wealth.
Given this rich wealth, if we ignore the framework in which that allows us to conserve as well as to sustainably utilize these resources, and we do not recognize the threats as well as the opportunities associated therein, we can lead or find ourselves under severe social and economic circumstances. So the statement is very simple, that as a matter of survival, economic and otherwise, we need to move much more aggressively in this direction.
One of the things we recognize in terms of biotechnology skills in this country and also within the region, it's somewhat lacking, and which puts us at a very vulnerable level because the world is moving, globalization is taking place, and in some instances we have no choice. So we have to be able to build our capacity to address those issues that we would most likely be faced with, or to reap the particular benefits that exist.
Guyana is among 11 other Caribbean countries seeking to implement a national biosafety framework as part of their obligation to the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. There is more of the Weekly Digest after these messages.
Community development plans will serve as a springboard for advancing Amerindian development. With the signing of the agreement with the United Nations Development Fund for the release of the GRIFT funds, soon 27 communities will begin implementation of their plans, with most of them focusing on various aspects of farming.
The East Bank Demerara is undergoing significant transformation as the drive to ensure that Guyanese own their own homes continue. The Housing Ministry's vision is to distribute 30,000 house lots on that corridor alone within the next 5 years. The continued growth of the local rice sector is as a result of government's investment in improved farming techniques and encouraging farmers to cultivate more to harness the growing demand for the crop in overseas markets. Guyana has had 2 successive years of production of more than 400,000 tons of rice and is on track to better the 2012 figure of 422,000 tons. The Ministry of Agriculture is moving to consolidate existing markets and expand it to others, in keeping with the drive to return Guyana to being the breadbasket of the Caribbean.
The government of Guyana is embarking on a multi-million-dollar security strategy, which will bring comprehensive operational and administrative reforms within the joint services. It is envisaged that successful implementation of this plan will see a more efficient security sector. The strategic plan for the police force is expected to cost $35 million, the Home Affairs Ministry $1.18 billion, and the prison service $831 million. During the implementation of this reform process, the ministry is prepared to accommodate any level of public scrutiny to ensure greater transparency and accountability of its activities and those of the departments that fall under its jurisdiction.
Preparations are underway for another phase of the hinterland electrification program, even as 11,000 solar panels were distributed last year. Government's vision is to ensure that every hinterland household has access to electricity within 5 years.
Budget 2013 will see government operating in an environment of policy continuity. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh recently gave an insight into some priority areas that government will advance in the 2013 national budget.
Included on the agenda is continued preservation of the nation's macroeconomic stability, which also takes in containment of inflation rate.
Guyana has been regionally and globally recognized for the magnitude of our accomplishments as it relates to our sustained economic growth in an extremely hostile external environment. That requires a certain macroeconomic framework to be in place. Our plan with Budget 2013 is to ensure the preservation of that macroeconomic framework, one that will see continued real growth in gross domestic product, containment of inflation within acceptable norms.
Also on the agenda to be advanced in 2013 is the launch of a revised Central Recruitment and Manpower Agency that will actively reach out to job seekers and employers with components for matching placement services.
We'll be looking at ways in which we can strengthen the role of institutions, whether within the Ministry of Labour or otherwise, to be better equipped to match job seekers with the private sector, potential employers. There are initiatives that we're looking at that we hope will see the establishment of mechanisms to better bring these two together.
The country will also witness continuing emphasis on investment in physical infrastructure, social services, education, health, water, sanitation, and institutional reforms. The government worked with a budget of $192.8 billion last year.
The Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development has secured funding to purchase hundreds of garbage bins to be placed in and around the city.
The ministry has received funding which will be used to procure bins of varying sizes which will be placed at specific public spaces such as schools, hospitals, and markets.
We go on to a next aspect of that loan program, and that has to do with the acquisition of bins. Cabinet did approve expenditure equivalent to $185,000 to procure some 800 bins of varying capacity, 240 liters, some of them will be 660 liters, and some 1,100 liters. And these are to be placed in the public spaces, school compounds, the compound of hospitals, so that members of the public can use these facilities.
The ministry will also be hosting a workshop targeting staff of the various NDCs to discuss the use of the bins and other matters relating to the Higgs-Bush landfill.
So we meet with them to discuss that, to get their views on that, and to discuss further the issue of payment of tipping fees for the use of the facilities at Higgs-Bush. Presently, That cost is being met from the loan. But after August, when the loan agreement would have officially come to an end, that facility would also come to an end. So we'll be engaging the NDC and the municipality on that.
Recently, the minister and members of the private sector visited the Hagsbush site. The private sector officials expressed satisfaction based on operations of the landfill, according to the minister.
Ministry of Health through the chest clinic at the GPHC will amplify public awareness about tuberculosis in the next few weeks.
Tuberculosis, commonly called TB, is a contagious and severe airborne disease caused by bacterial infections. TB typically affects the lungs, but it may also affect other organs of the body. And in an effort, the National TB Program has focused on diagnosis, treatment, and care of tuberculosis.
A lot of screening, a lot of awareness is being done, and a lot of screening also, because almost 10,000 sputum slides were done, and that shows the amount of people being screened for TB.
The Chest Clinic of the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation will be heightening awareness of tuberculosis this year in an effort to reduce the disease, which is curable.
One of the main activities that we have planned this year is a health fair. We're hoping to hold this in Region 5 at the Mycone Hospital compound, and we're inviting the general public, whoever may be interested, to come out and learn a little bit about TB, as well as to access some of the services that we're going to have available for you. TB is a disease that is treatable, curable, and preventable. And what we aim to do, and what we do all through the year, but we want to place a little more emphasis on it this year on World TB Day, is to make sure that the public is aware of TB. The public is knowledgeable about the signs and symptoms of TB, and to reduce the problems associated with stigma and discrimination, and to ensure that the Guyanese population, through the sensitization drive, is aware of, can identify, and protect themselves and others against tuberculosis.
The reduction of the problems associated with stigma and discrimination of tuberculosis will ensure that the Guyanese population, through the sensitization drive, is aware of, identify, and protect themselves and others.
There is more of the Weekly Digest after these messages.
The continued growth of the local rice sector is as a result of government's investment in improved farming techniques and encouraging farmers to cultivate more to harness the growing demand for the crop in overseas markets. Guyana has had 2 successive years of production of more than 400,000 tons of rice and is on track to better the 2012 figure of 422,000 tons. The Ministry of Agriculture is moving to consolidate existing markets and expand into others, in keeping with the drive to return Guyana to being the breadbasket of the Caribbean.
The government of Guyana is embarking on a multi-million-dollar security strategy, which will bring comprehensive operational and administrative reforms within the joint services. It is envisaged that successful implementation of this plan will see a more efficient security sector. The strategic plan for the police force is expected to cost $35 million, the Home Affairs Ministry $1.18 billion, and the Prison Service $831 million. During the implementation of this reform process, the Ministry is prepared to accommodate any level of public scrutiny to ensure greater transparency and accountability of its activities and those of the departments that fall under its jurisdiction.
Community development plans will serve as a springboard for advancing Amerindian development. With the signing of the agreement with the United Nations Development Fund for the release of the GRIFT funds, soon 27 communities will begin implementation of their plans, with most of them focusing on various aspects of farming.
The National Synthetic Track is expected to be completed by the end of 2014. The Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport has been monitoring works to ensure that the facility is completed on schedule.
The ministry recently awarded a $176 million contract to BK International for the construction of 2 stands at the northern side of the National Synthetic Track located at Lenora, West Coast Demerara. The stands will be designed with reinforced concrete structure, metal roof, and prefabricated stanchion at the sides using stainless steel. Each will be able to accommodate 1,500 people, and the construction is expected to be completed by November this year.
With all the contracts that we've had here to date, would have been close to 641 million that we would have given out contracts to date. This particular contract is 176 million, so you have to add that on to the 641, and that would be the sum that we would have allocated to date. For us to do the other stands, because we are moving into the phase now where we'll be concentrating on the stands, what the contract that we have given out today would be for the northern stands. Capacity of those two would be 3,000, because they're 1,500 each, so 3,000. To do the others, to bring it up to our expectation of having about 8,000 to 10,000 people in this facility, we have budgeted for that in this year's allocation. So if we receive that, then we'll be able to proceed in constructing the other stands.
The project is designed into phases, and at present there are 5 operating contractors, one of whom is behind schedule. That contractor is constructing the Eastern Access Road as well as the Perimeter Road. The overall project will see a total of $1.4 billion invested by government.
Fencing is critical for any guarantee or any work to be done on the track itself. Rugopol will have to be assured that its entire site is controlled and secured. That is at a point where I believe it's about 60% now. All that is needed there now is the finishing off of the steel works and, of course, applying the chain link fencing, which will take a shorter time to apply once that structure is up.
The fencing is about 60% completed, and the steel works and the chain link fencing will be placed soon. The grass of the inner field has commenced and germination is expected shortly. Additionally, the parking area, the access road, booth, security checkpoint by the end of this month will be at a stage where crusher run will be laid.
During Cabinet's meeting, His Excellency Donald Ramotar and government ministers discussed several issues of national concern. These were subsequently related to the media. Teachers and parents were entertained with stunning performances from students from the 10 administrative regions and the Georgetown Educational District in the form of dance and masquerade, calypso and dramatic poetry and choir presentations. The new category of hip-hop also saw great participation. Region 10 dominated this category. This competition gives students the opportunity to display their talents, acquire knowledge, skills, and values in the art forms, foster creativity and confidence, and develop discipline and teamwork. Some of the main sponsors of the competition are the Ghana Telephone and Telegraph Company Limited, GT&T, Ghana Bank for Trade and Industry, GBTI, Germain's Enterprises, and Courts Ghana, Inc. During Cabinet's meeting, His Excellency Donald Ramotar and government ministers discussed several issues of national concern. These were subsequently related to the media.
At its Tuesday, February 12th statutory meeting, Cabinet gave its no objection to one contract valued at 35.37 million Ghana dollars for the supply of exercise books intended for national distribution via the education sector. This is according to Cabinet Secretary Dr. Roger Luncheon, who also announced that the decision on February 7th by Parliamentary House Speaker Raphael Trotman to allow Home Affairs Minister Clement Rohi to speak during the House's proceedings was welcomed by Cabinet.
On the delay in granting that approval was unjustified, the Speaker ultimately acted in accordance with sound judgment and advice. The opposition, with their one-seat majority, has continued with the abuse of traditional parliamentary procedures and practices, the standing order, and even the Constitution.
The ongoing Republic celebrations will culminate with a flag-raising ceremony at the National Public Buildings and the address to the nation by President Donald Ramotar. Cabinet members will perform similar tasks at events in the administrative regions.
In Region 1, Minister Whittaker. Region 2, Minister Webster. Region 3, Minister Ali. 4, Minister Edgehill. 5, Minister Ramsamy. 6, Minister Ramsaran. 7, Minister Robert Prasad. 8, Minister Pauline Sukai. 9, Minister Ganga Prasad. And 10, Minister Jennifer Westward.
The exact date for the design and agreement of the operation of CCTV, which has begun broadcasting, is still to be ascertained, according to the Cabinet Secretary.
A review of the records up to 2004 made mention of the agreement, but its execution is the date of its execution is still being ascertained. It is at that time and the execution of the agreement that the government committed to provide a channel for the signal from CCTV to be made available to Guyanese audiences.
Dr. Luncheon noted that a similar arrangement with CCTV exists in over a dozen other countries to date. Meanwhile, government, he said, is fully supportive of the position taken by Labour Minister Dr. Nanda Gopal, who recently visited the Marriott Hotel's construction site in Kingston, Georgetown.
Cabinet stands with the position that has been adumbrated by Minister Gopal, which in essence justifies the NISIL position, the NISIL acceptance and the execution of the contract that has now attracted the attention of the public.
And with that, we've come to the end of this week's edition of the Weekly Digest, but before we go, here's a recap of the highlights. Government continues to ensure that privatization process is transparent. NRE to revamp the draft 2005 National Biosafety Policy, and Finance Minister revealed priorities in the 2013 budget. Remember that the Weekly Digest and other government information can be found on our website www.gina.gov.gy, or send us your comments and suggestions at gina@gina.gov.gy. Thank you for having us in your homes. Join us next week as we highlight more of what government is doing for you. Cheers to a productive week. I'm Sue Finlay Williams. Goodbye.